Good evening, everybody. Today is April the 23rd, 2020. You find yourself in the meeting of the Rochester City School District Board of Education. Welcome, and we're glad to have you here. We want you to know that if you're not able to catch the full meeting, you can catch it on our YouTube page or our Facebook page. You can also catch it on rcsdk12.org. Is that right? And your comments are always welcome. And today it's going to be a little bit different than how we used to do it when we do the speaker session, but we'll explain those changes in a moment. Again, I hope the Board of Education hopes everybody is well, feeling blessed and safe. We know that these are very trying times and know that this Board of Education is praying for you, but equally significant, we are there trying to provide your children and your families the resources that they need, even in this difficult and unprecedented times. Last week, we talked about Heroes of Hope that have distributed thousands of Chromebooks for our children. And we are encouraged by the generosity of grant folks, but we're also encouraged and proud that we have staff that are providing these services. We begin every meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I happen to have one here where I am, and I would ask those who want to do so to join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, just like you used to in school. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next item on the agenda is acceptance of the minutes. Looks like we have minutes from our business meeting on March the 26th, 2020. We also have minutes from our CIGR, that's the Committee on Intergovernmental Relations. And those meeting minutes are dated November the 19th, 2019 and February the 11th, 2019. The chair of that committee, for anybody who wants to know, is City School District Commissioner Ricardo Adams. Ricardo, do you know does anybody know when your next CIGR meeting is, just so that folks who want to tune in can? Do you know, Kalia? I know, Ricardo, you probably got a million things going on. You got
yes.
Yep.
Yes, it's June 23rd.
June 23rd. And Ricardo, very briefly, if you could just tell folks what the CIGR committee does, just generally speaking. He's just trying to unmute himself, I think. Oops, did we lose him? I guess we lost him. Oh, there he is. Ricardo, you want to tell folk you can't, your audio's not working? All right, well, CIGR is a committee. We have several committees, and that's a committee that helps us figure out how do we connect with other governmental agencies. Ricardo, you want to handle that?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Okay, yeah. So let me give you an update. We had another meeting Tuesday, this just past Tuesday, our last meeting, April 21st. We had an update on the parent representative application process, which is now open for parents, and it's going to be open until May 15th. We have a website. There's a Spanish version on the website as well as the English version. There'll be a training for newly appointed parent reps it's slated for sometime in the summer. The committee also began discussions on workshop topics for the next community forum, which is slated to be held in November for families in the district. The event is held in partnership with the Office of Parent Engagement and provides an opportunity for parents and community members to engage with the board and voice any questions or concerns. Conversations regarding this event will continue as the planning process ramps up in the upcoming months. On Tuesday, we also had the athletic department discussion. We decided to host a virtual student athletic recognition to accommodate for the disruption to the traditional recognition ceremonies as a result of this COVID-19 crisis. Board staff will be working with the athletic department to establish the details for this recognition program to be prior to the East EPO business meeting on June 4th. And like Van said earlier, it was our next CIGR committee meeting is Tuesday, June 23rd at 5:30. And
All right.
that's it, Van.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Adams. I neglected to, I don't think we took a vote on the minutes, did we? I didn't do that, so we need to do that. Again, what we need to do is, what we do at this particular point, we have prior meetings. There are notes that are taken. There has to be a record of it. Yes, yep.
Yeah, so
Ricardo?
I want to put in a motion to review and accept the minutes from the November 19th, 2019 meeting of CIGR and the February 11th, 2020 minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Did you get that, Madam Clerk?
I
Commissioner
did,
Malloy?
but Commissioner Adams, would you mind also adding the minutes from the March 26th?
Well, no, I was going to do that, but doesn't make any difference. I'll do that. We're just going to do his minutes. That's fine. So there's a standing motion from Commissioner Malloy, seconded by Commissioner LeBron, to approve the CIGR minutes. All those in favor, just say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Looks like the ayes have it. Now, what I neglected to do earlier on is get the approval of the minutes from the March 26th, 2020 meeting for the Board of Education. So I need a motion. As chair, I can't make the motion. Somebody want to make it for me?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. Any questions or comments or amendments to those minutes? All right, there being no questions or comments, all those in favor of approving the minutes from March 26, 2020 from our business meeting, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, those minutes, all those minutes have been approved. We're next moving on to the speakers portion of our agenda. Now, things have changed just a little bit, but because of COVID-19, speakers will provide comments via Zoom video conferencing. This is the first time we've done this. You know, in the past, folks, what the board has decided to do is just take written comments and then people read them. Well, now we're going to incorporate you all into our process. Folks are going to be able to be on live and real time through Zoom video conferencing. Speakers not wishing to participate, you don't have to get on the camera, can provide their written comments to the Rochester City School District. Kalia or Marisol, what's the address where you send in your written comments? Email address?
Our Board of Education at rcsdk12.org.
Thank you very much, ma'am. All those comments tonight that are written in and the comments that you might submit in the future will be posted on the district's website. And this list that we've prepared that Ms. Wade is posted for you up here represents those people who will be speaking via Zoom video conferencing and those that have provided written statements. And once again, those statements will be uploaded into various platforms so that people can have access to them. We're going to do something a little bit different that we haven't done before. Normally, the board president for eons, decades, has been calling out these names, but because of the new normal, we're going to have our clerk. They always do a better job at pronouncing names than I do. They're going to read off the names, and once you're, is it 2 minutes today or 3 minutes? Is it 3?
2.
2. Once you're 2 minutes up, here's the thing about this kind of modern technology, folks. Before we had to, almost sometimes remove a few people from the podium. Now you'll be given a warning, I think. And then after the 2 minutes is up, you will be muted and your video feed will be cut off. We don't want to be rude, so please keep your comments to 2 minutes. Without further ado, I turn the gavel over to our clerk.
Thank you very much, President White. Our first speaker is Kadra Al-Badi, who is a student from RIA. Kadra, please turn your camera and your sound on, and I will start your 2 minutes as soon as I see you on screen. Go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kadra Al-Badi and I'm a senior at RIA. RIA
is a little puzzle. A piece of this puzzle is missing or will not be completed. That's what all Ria family believe in. Words cannot explain how important and special Ria is to all of the students. Ria is not just a program, it's everything: home, country, and family. If you separate our family, it will have a huge impact on the student and staff. Students at RIA feel safe and respected. They can ask for help, and teachers do everything to help them. I always remember my first day at school. I felt like I was in a maze that we'll never figure out. But when I saw how teachers showed me love, how they were willing to help and treated me with respect, I was comfortable enough to talk and to be who I am. Seeing people who are like me, having little to no English and are new in America, showed me that I'm in the right place. My brother, who's in the second grade, was crying when I told him that he might go to another school. He was asking how about my classmates and teachers. Even my family is so scared about that because they know that RIA is truly a family where they take care of everyone. Most of the board members came to RIA and saw how amazing the RIA family is, separating us separating us from K through 5 family is not the right choice. I hope you understand this affects not only staff and teach and students, but refugees community as well. We know RIA is a safe place for us, and we are all heartbroken about this possible change. I hope you really look at how this will affect the most at the risk population. Please do not separate us from our family. We have already been through that in our countries. Don't make us go through it again. Please vote no on May 7th. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kadra. Our next speaker is Jade Rodriguez, but Jade is not in the room. So we're going to move on to the next speaker, who is Mpenzi Johanna. Mpenzi is a student and is going to be speaking about RIA. Mpenzi, if you could turn your video and your sound on, I will let you, once I see you on screen, then you have 2 minutes and you can go ahead. Mpenzi? There you are. You can go ahead and start. Make sure your audio is on, please. We cannot hear you. So what I'm gonna do, Mpenzi, if you can hear me, there you are. Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank
Good
you.
evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mpenzi Johanna, a senior at Rochester International Academy. Are you the superintendent that want to cut K to 5 at Rochester International Academy? I'm writing to you because it will be very helpful if you vote not to cut K to 5 at RIA. I want you to know that I, including my brothers and sisters, need RIA because RIA has a lifestyle that anyone new in the country needs. RIA is not only a school of learning English, but RIA is also a school of learning about the community surrounding us. I want my little brothers and sisters to grow up with the same lifestyle as I have right now because kids at RIA are not only being taught how to learn English, but they are also taught how to respect others. Meanwhile, in different schools that have pre-K and K to 5, kids are learning different behaviors. They are they are speaking differently with one another. My 5 years old brother's behaviors changed since he started pre-K in different school. The ideas of having my brothers and sisters in different school hurts me because having one of us away make me worry. Because if something happened to him, the only person that can reach out is me first. Because my parents are not English speaker. This will affect me when I'm still in class, and receiving a call about an incident may lead me to leave school, and it may also force my parents to leave work. Having my brothers and sisters at the same school will make our life easy as the big brothers, because everything will be right in the same building, and that will give us less heartbreaking worry. I hope you will understand that Ria with the K to 5 will feel like living in a house alone with no kids to play with around. I hope you see now that it is important to keep grade K to 12 at Ria, because Ria is one big family and it is stand as a tree. The beauty and the happiness of family is having children. K to 5 at Ria are the children in the family, because without them, our house will be a disaster and there will be no happiness, because seeing the little ones smiles is our priority at Ria. Taking K to 5 from taking K to 5 from Ria, our social worker and our counselor away from all the district will make our tree fall apart, because we need our tree to continue growing. Please vote no on May 7th. Thank you.
You're muted, Marisol.
Catherine, you can go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Regardless of the events of the past 24 hours, I'm speaking today to specifically advocate against the proposed budget cuts to social workers. The budget presentation suggests that Monroe County DSS and Catholic Family Services will support RCSD social workers next year. A common misunderstanding is that social work services can be assumed by community providers. This partnership does not and cannot replace the services provided by school social workers. School social workers are the only provider that are licensed by New York State and possess a school certification with a scope of practice protected under the law. Other providers cannot legally perform the functions of a school social worker. As it stands, the proposed 1:50 ratio of social workers to IEP counseling students would not allow for enough time in a school schedule for a social worker to meet the legal requirements of providing services to those 50 IEP students. Failing to meet this mandate would have legal ramifications, would be detrimental to the students that we serve, and would prevent the district from maximizing the revenue they collect by billing Medicaid for our services. The proposed budget also fails to consider the additional roles of a school social worker. On top of mandated counseling, we also conduct assessments for the CSE process. We participate in CSE meetings, provide counseling to general education students, conduct crisis management, risk assessments, behavioral interventions, restorative practices. We engage families, we're advocates, we conduct home visits, and we maintain communication with community members and providers. With these proposed cuts, I urge you to consider who will fill this role if social workers are no longer as available as they are in schools now. I plead that you all work together with our superintendent to develop a plan that does not cut social workers at this time and does not add any other positions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. We appreciate your comments. Our next speaker is Corey Lynn Reimer. Corey, will you please turn your screen on and your sound? You may go ahead, Corey. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I am writing to you to express my concern regarding the proposed budget cuts to visual arts. I have proudly served the children of this district for 5 years. In that time, I have seen what our small department is capable of. Our staff consistently goes above and beyond for the children of Rochester. We reach and teach every student in our schools, which very few staff members do. There are currently 80 art teachers who service the entire district of approximately 25,000 young people in grades K through 12. Visual arts is not overstaffed. I ask you to please reconsider cutting 16 talented, energetic, and caring art teachers. Every year when I am hanging the student art show at central office, employees I don't even know come up to me and tell me their favorite time of the year is when the walls of central office are covered with student artwork. Though Superintendent Dade hasn't experienced the student art show in person, I know the members of the school board have. It is both gratifying and affirming to see our students with huge smiles dressed up and standing in front of their artwork as their families take their pictures. As an art educator, I know art is a necessary element of child development. The fine motor skills we take for granted as adults are developed through art from a very young age through grade school. Children learn to express themselves and develop both visual and verbal language through art. Art allows children to develop important social skills such as sharing and demonstrating empathy. Studies show that students who participate regularly in the arts perform better in areas such as science and math. Art can even improve the physical health and the emotional control and responses in children. We give students a chance to express themselves. We fill the hallways with colorful artwork. We give students a safe space to be themselves. We put tools and materials into our students' hands that many do not have at home. Art is the reason some students show up to school at all. Students tell me every week that art is their favorite part of their school day. Superintendent Dade's first of 3 rocks addresses the need to change the narrative for the RCSD. Making cuts to the visual arts doesn't change the RCSD narrative, it perpetuates it. It continues the cycle of inadequacy that our students live with each day. Cutting 20%
I'm sorry,
of art
Corey.
teachers.
Your 2 minutes have expired.
Thank you for your
Thank you
time.
very much for your comments. Our next speaker is Stacy Embry. Stacy?
Yes, hi, good evening. My name is Stacy Embry, and I have been a speech pathologist in this district and at School 43 for the past 24 years. Last week, it was announced that my school was being recommended for closure at the end of June. It was incredibly heartbreaking and almost cruel to have found this out through the media. I think that the School 43 staff, students, parents, and community deserved more than that. Tonight, I am asking you to reconsider what seems to be another attack on the most vulnerable, our district students and their schools. I understand the decision to close our building was based on 3 points of a triangle. It was stated that School 43 was underutilized, old, and had low scores. I would like to address these 3 points and bring to your attention some inaccuracies. The first point was that we are underutilized is not accurate. Yes, our enrollment has dropped to 440 students. However, did you even consider the fact that it is because we are disproportionately heavy with special education students and self-contained classrooms? Those are 12-1-1s and 15-1 classrooms. These classrooms cannot have more than 12 or 15 students in them by law. Over the years, the district has given us more and more of these classrooms. To date, we have 5 12-1-1 classrooms and 2 15-1 classrooms. These self-contained classrooms have a total of only 90 available spots for students instead of 175 that would be for non-self-contained classrooms. If we had equitable distribution of general ed and special education classroom settings, our numbers of students would be right back up to 615. We did not ask for these self-contained classrooms, but we embraced them and we created safe and successful environments for our district. Yet, the district's decision over the years to place this large amount of these self-contained classroom settings in our building is now being used against us. How about we close down the falling portables in the back of our field and move those classrooms into the building? This would add more students in building. Point 2, it was stated that we had low test scores. In addition to 7 self-contained classrooms, we also have 2 lead classrooms and 4 ICOT classrooms. As you can see, once again, School 43 has more special education students in classrooms than most other buildings in the district at the elementary level. That brings—
I'm sorry, Stacy, I have to interrupt you because your 2 minutes have expired. But if you want to submit those in writing, we can go ahead and send them to board members and post them on the website.
I did.
Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate your comments. Our final speaker this evening is Mary Andercolic Montesano Diaz. She's a staff member, principal at RIA. Mary, welcome. You can unmute yourself and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Marisol. Good evening, everyone. RIA has been a hot topic during this budget deliberation since there is a proposal to eliminate the K-5 part of RIA. And I know that board members are being chastised now for being vocal of their support of RIA. The support is echoed throughout the community. I want everyone to know that I understand that there are no sacred cows, as RIA has been referred to, but my concern is that there are many misunderstandings in the purpose and the growth of RIA and how it transpired over the last 10 years. This was apparent in the answers of the board's questions in regards to RIA, as the questions were not answered with the full narrative. And we all know that data can be skewed depending upon the writer and the reader. Unfortunately, those answers are all that are presented to the board and the community at large, and without any input from anyone at RIA. It also saddens me to hear Superintendent Day say that in the districts that he was in prior to RCSD, that there were not programs like RIA, and hence it appears that it does not align with his philosophy in regards to ENL students. Hence, not only is RIA fighting against a budget deficit, but also against the philosophy of our superintendent. He has referred to RIA as magical, but that magic is due to the incredible amount of work that all RIA staff members engage in, instructional and social emotional work that has been documented nationwide, but never tapped into by my own district. RIA is slated to lose 23.6 teachers. However, there is a way to keep a modified version of our K-5 program and make the adjustments recommended by the state with the reallocations of 10 teachers. I hope that this proposal will be taken into consideration, as my students' learning loss right now during this pandemic is real, coupled with their heightened PTSD, and to send all the K-5 students off to a new school without the support that they need would once again be as inequitable as it was 10 years ago when all of the RCSD supported the creation of RIA because of the need. That need still exists today. Superintendent Dade, whatever decision you make about the RCSD, I respect you and wish you well. And please know that this stance is the mama bear in me and the leader that I am for my community that I serve. Ramadan Kareem, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. President White, this concludes our speakers portion of the meeting for this evening. You have to unmute yourself, President White.
Thank you. I want to thank staff, and most importantly, on behalf of the board, I want to thank the speakers. You are trendsetters. Nobody has done this before in Monroe County in terms of public governance. You all did well, and we appreciate you sticking to the time. And to those that got cut off, we apologize for the abruptness, but there are rules that we have, and as staff has indicated, your message, your statements will be forwarded to us for our review. Additionally, I would note that, Kali, I don't know if you could pull it up, but there are 7 other people who submitted written statements. These statements are available to the Board of Education to review and for the public to review. So I would encourage folks to look at those. Those folks are talking about, as you can see, a variety of topics. A number of them relate to the cuts to the arts department. There's some reference to social workers and one reference to JROTC. And in an event, you think that the board doesn't read these things. Actually, we do. And I want to say I found all the comments very insightful, very helpful as we deliberate through this budget. And by the way, I learned some stuff that this is just from my perspective that I was not aware of by these letters, by these emails. So please keep it coming. The Board of Education truly appreciates the effort that you put into informing us how we can do our jobs better. Next item on the agenda are advisory council reports. I don't see our student rep on. Oh no, Tatiana, she's there. Tatiana, do you have a report?
Yeah, I have a report tonight.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. Tonight I will be reporting on Student Leadership Congress April Zoom meeting. We started the meeting by introducing our names and schools. Then we said a 6 to 7 word memoir about how you would describe your life, character, and personal qualities. Students had a chance to use this activity to keep them motivated in being leaders. I updated the Congress on my recent quarantine activities to try to maintain a normal schedule. Then I gave a light review of the things that I have heard and know about the new budget cuts. We took a moment to check in with everyone to see how they are managing during these difficult times. A majority of the students mentioned the feeling of boredom, loneliness, and feeling a lack of motivation. Students also commented on the hardship of keeping a schedule, trying to manage the overwhelming and underwhelming school assignments. Overwhelming because some teachers aren't being considerate of other classes and family life situations. Underwhelming because teachers aren't keeping students engaged for the return of school. The new grading system isn't very clear to students and how we will receive them. Students had a few questions about the budget. The main concern was staying informed about the decisions being made and how we will be impacted in the long run. One of my fellow peers in the Student Leadership Congress has started a Facebook account for artists, athletes, writers, singers, dancers, poets, instrumentalists, actors, and any other talented person in Rochester. The Facebook account is called Rochester Youth Talent Collaborative. More information can be found on the account. Thank you.
You all set, Tatiana? Put your
Yeah,
mic
I'm
back on. For folks who haven't had the opportunity to see you on this Zoom format before, could you tell of the folks out there that are watching where you go to school, what grade you're in, and how you got the position that you're in right now and what that position is?
Okay, so I go to World Inquiry High School, or 58. I am the president of Student Leadership Congress, and that just gives me the opportunity to be the student representative on the board and just represent all my peers.
Now, Tatiana, I'm going to need you or Commissioner Powell to remind me, because I sometimes forget, and it's a terrible thing to forget to do this, to make sure I do the student advisory vote. If you're still around, are you going to be around this evening when we do the votes on some of these resolutions, or do you have to go do some?
I believe so. I'll still be around. I just I didn't really get a chance to review.
All right. Well, yeah. I'm glad you told me that. So then I won't do that. But I want folks to know that we have a person that is Tatiana, who represents the students of the Rochester School District, and she has the right and the responsibility, when she is prepared and able to do that, to offer up an advisory vote. So later on during the meeting, we're going to consider a whole bunch of resolutions, things we got to purchase, people we got to hire, and she is there to provide the Board of Education, all 7 of us, some guidance and direction about what the students would say. So we thank you for your service, Tatiana. How's the family doing? Everybody okay?
Yeah, everyone's good.
All right.
You know, making it work.
Yep, making it work. All right. Next item on the agenda is, I assume we do not have a Parent Advisory Council report. And how about a Bilingual Education Council report?
We do not have any of those reports,
Okay.
President White.
That's good. And again, I would imagine part of the reason behind that is, at least with respect to the Bilingual Council, that's been very faithful about giving us regular reports. It's because of COVID-19. It probably makes meeting very, very difficult. And also those folks that are on the Bilingual Council, Education Council, are volunteers. So they have families and work-related responsibilities, even if they're home. So we thank them for their service and look forward to when they can report again to the Board of Education in terms of what's going on in their area of interest. Next item on the agenda is board reports. Thankfully, Commissioner Adams already gave his CIGR report, and we appreciate that. Next item is the Finance and Resource Allocation Committee report. Commissioner LeBron, there's a couple of reports, and I don't know if you wanted to add some other information.
Yeah, I'm just going to read some of the updates that are written, so give me one quick second.
Sure.
Oh my goodness, I'm having technical difficulties because I wrote them down and screenshot them to send them to myself. Hold on.
That's all right. No worries. Take your time.
Okay, well, now it's... Van, skip me and come back to me after the next person because I'm having technical difficulties pulling it up. Sure.
All right, well, then the next person would be me because we only had one committee report today, and that was provided by Commissioner Adams. I found that in the recent past, it's not really necessary to give a president's report because we communicate so much by email and we meet so frequently. But there are a couple of updates that I would like to share with you. We may take some action or have some conversation about one of those topics when we get to old business. And that is the first thing. I had promised you all that I would provide an update with respect to the EPO budget and the process that we created to see if we could reach some resolution, some agreement on what the EPO's contribution could be to the district's budget. And I first want to begin this update by thanking Superintendent Dade and Superintendent Sean Nelms for their directing staff at the board's direction to participate in a facilitated conversation between EPO staff and district staff. More specifically, and I think I have these names right, Steve Eubing from the University of Rochester and Carlene Pierce from the EPO participated in these meetings. On the other side, it was the district team that, as I understand it, consisted of Bob, Anne Marie, and Linda Quick. Anne Marie Lerner, Bob Fitzgerald, I got that right? Right. And Linda Quick. I want to thank these 5 individuals for having participated and their respective bosses. I believe that they have moved us in a positive, productive direction. Most of all, I want to thank BJ Smith, who is a person who's respected in this arena, that is school finance, former CFO for the Buffalo School District, and Catherine Barrett. All of my colleagues know who Ms. Barrett is. She is our external auditor from Freed Maxick. And just for folks a little history, we have to really thank Ms. Barrett for identifying the financial oversight that actually got us in this position. But we really want to thank them for having facilitated the conversation between our collective staff. And finally, I should thank the University of Rochester. I was in the position to select the 2 facilitators. I did that independently of I had no input by the U of R or by central office, but the U of R agreed to pay for the cost of Ms. Barrett's service and Ms. Smith's service. So I want to thank the U of R for doing that. The end game here, the end result was to work with the University of Rochester and the RCSD finance teams to look for efficiencies in the district's budget and savings in the EPO budget. The meeting was described to me as positive and productive and allowed district representatives to better understand the role of the EPO receiver, and for the U of R to better understand the fiscal realities and challenges of our district. These teams collectively will continue to work together to ensure that every option is explored and discussed, every stone unturned. That being said, at this particular point, as promised, I do have an update on their discussions thus far. I am proposing, as a result of their conversations, that the U of R EPO reduce its spending by 20%. They have agreed, the participants, that the baseline for the U of R's budget last year was $22.9 million. The respective parties agreed that that was the number that we had to calculate what the reduction was. So 20% off from that leaves at 18.32 reduction, or a 4.5, this is what it is in real numbers, a $4.5 million reduction. So their budget would be 18.32 million. The reduction would be 4.58 million. Again, I think it's important to understand that, I'm not finished, Commissioner Laurent. I think it's important to understand that the test of our efforts is if we get from one point to another. We're not there yet completely, but for anybody who thinks that I'm talking about the Board of Education, the superintendent, who has doubts as to whether we collectively can get to a budget that is responsible, but yet addresses fully and most efficiently the needs of our children. I think these discussions that our staff had, it wasn't the board, wasn't the superintendents, it's our staff from the EPO, from the central office, that are providing this recommendation. So when we get to old business, I am going to be proposing and recommending that the Rochester City School District adopt this particular proposal. And that based on my conversations with the affected parties, that we agree to incorporate this recommendation of a 20% reduction, which effectively is 4.58 million, into our current budget proposal. Now I realize that still doesn't get us where we need to be, but it definitely is sure enough better than where we were. Commissioner LeBron, I respectfully, this is just my report. I hope that we can agree to talk about this in detail, which we have to, but in old business. I want to, if possible, unless it's a really pressing question, I'd like to just continue on with my report. Is that okay, Commissioner LeBron? And then we have to, of course, talk about this, but my proposal is that we talk about it in old business.
Yeah, but let me just add this, Van, that you also mentioned that they were going back to the table Friday to have further discussions, but you're also saying that you're going to bring forth a resolution today, and we're still not at 6 million. So we can have further conversations around this when we get there, but I just want to point that out, that was your communication to the board, aside from anybody else being in that conversation.
I'm not exactly clear what you're saying, but let me respond as best I can. What I am indicating today is this group has agreed to continue to meet Friday. And I think that's consistent with the spirit that we cannot ever say we've done enough. And that includes the EPO and the folks in this district. So, but I do believe that I was asked to give an update to you all today, Thursday, and I'm doing that consistent with that. I also think, and we could talk about this in the old business later on the agenda, I also think at some point, the numbers have to start being put as a part of our budget. And we have an entirely different number that reflects a significant movement on the part of the EPO and the district. And I think the budget ought to reflect it. But again, I'd ask that we talk about that in old business. And if the board decides that they want to wait to see if there's any further movement by this group of individuals, then that's fine. We can wait until Monday or Tuesday when our next meeting is. But my goal was to keep my promise to report back to you all about the progress, if any, that has been made, and some has been made. And by the way, when we get to old business, if, you know, I understand, and to your credit, you've been very clear, you want 6%, but it would be the Board of Education that would decide whether 4.58 or 4.58 is the $1 million and a reduction is the appropriate amount. So that's what I'm looking for in old business. But if the board were to say, we want to wait to see if there's any more, and I don't know that there's going to be more, I'm just reporting back, as I told you all I would by this date. But if the full board says 4.58 is good movement, it's 20%, it's a 20% reduction, then that would be incorporated into the budget. But let's talk about that when we get to old business. The other update that I wanted to give, and I distributed this to you all know that I have been for quite some time working every angle possible to bring clarity around the funding streams coming out of the CARES Act. That's that federal legislation that Schumer and his colleagues in the Senate and Speaker Pelosi and ultimately President Trump signed. I've been doing this for quite some time, believing that we probably wouldn't be in this situation if that money was readily available to us. Our share of that grant, if we get it, and it's still, the operative phrase is if, is $29.1 million. We wouldn't be having these conversations about social workers, folks in art classes, if closing maybe even some schools, if we had access to those dollars. And that, again, the operative phrase is if. A couple of weeks ago, I sent you all an email regarding a conversation that I had with Michael Cashley. I sit on the board of the Council of Great City Schools. They're a very powerful and helpful organization to urban districts across this country. regarding how I believe those funds should be spent and how we should be fighting for them. Earlier today, literally just hours ago, Secretary DeVos issued a release containing the protocols for accessing these critical stabilization dollars. I attached a copy of Secretary DeVos's release. Just as I had anticipated and I've been arguing, these funds are intended to go to ELAs. And for those of you out there who don't know what that is, an ELA is basically a school board. It's supposed to be a grants process. I know what people have been reporting, and it's an accurate report that the governor intends on trying to take that money. But I maintain that he can't do that unless with due diligence, that process is followed through. Fortunately, Secretary DeVos separated those two pots of money, issued a second notice regarding this most recent pot of money. Her release, which I have given to my colleagues, which we will make available on our website, indicates that states, and I quote, should not micromanage the use of these stabilization funds. However, and I don't want anybody to say I told you so, however, we're not out of the woods yet because the state can apply for a waiver to keep those funds. But what is clear now is they have to go through the process of distributing the money to the state education agency and so forth. I am committed to continuing my effort to fight for these dollars because I believe it may render moot and cause a significant reduction in the tension and stress that everybody in this community feels. No stone can be left unturned. As part of that effort, I will continue to work with the Council of Great City Schools, the Big Five, and Senator Schumer's office, which none of this would have been possible without the work of Senator Schumer. By copy of these emails, I am asking that the administration answer the following budget-related questions. 1, when does the application process, which Secretary DeVos referred to, begin? 2, if the state was going to ask for a waiver, when would they have to apply for it? 3, if the state asked for a waiver, would we have the right to appeal it? And 4, while no official guidance has been issued, and that will be the next step, the state has to issue guidance. Is there a time frame for these applications? I would ask Ms. Wade to add those questions to the budget log, hoping that the answers to those questions will result in another stone being unturned, and perhaps us as an organization moving forward with a greater degree of confidence about what we can provide to our students. That concludes my report. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Superintendent Dade?
Van, I'm sorry.
Yes.
It's, Superintendent, can I give my finance report very quickly?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Past the budget amendments, okay.
Yep, sorry about
that. So I apologize.
No worries.
It was me, I was having technical difficulties. I apologize, Terry. I want to move forward with the finance report. So, and this is a letterhead. You guys all have a copy or should have a copy via email. So the Finance Committee convened on Tuesday, April 14th as Committee of the Whole via Zoom video conferencing. The Finance Committee recommends approval of the district's unaudited March 2020 financial report and the quarterly change report from January through March 2020. Can I have a motion for that now?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second, but to clarify, are you asking that we vote on both of these, the quarterly change order report and the financial report together?
Yes.
So Commissioner Powell, you made the motion. Did somebody second it or were you seconding somebody's? I didn't hear you.
I made the motion and Powell seconded.
Most important.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No yeas. And
No.
lastly, the 20, huh?
No.
I think Commissioner Shepherd said no.
Yeah, Commissioner Shepherd said no. And then lastly, the 2021 budget calendar upcoming events is we have a joint budget meeting tomorrow with City Council that will be Zoomed live and live streamed. It is 12 to 1:30 p.m. We have the second budget deliberation session, April 30th, starting at 4:30. And I think we changed the time even earlier, but I will double check. I thought we changed the time to 3:30, but I will double check on that. The budget memo to the district administration is going to be due May 1st. and then the board budget vote May 7th at 5:30. And that concludes my entire report. The next Finance Committee meeting is May 19th.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. Superintendent Dade, you're up.
Thank you, President White and commissioners. We have two primary updates for this evening. One is an update on one of our schools and the work of Mr. Schmidt and his team, stellar as always, to problem solve for us. And then it will be followed by an update from Deputy Quick with regards to our continuity of instruction plan as promised in a previous board meeting. So Mr. Schmidt.
Yes, good evening, President White, Vice President Elliott, and Commissioners. Unfortunately, I don't have good news to report this evening. Earlier this week, we had two significant breakages in a steam pipe at school number 25, Nathaniel Hawthorne, on the corner of Goodman and Bay Street. The steam line actually circulates the perimeter of the building, and the building toward Bay Street was damaged. 40% of the classrooms have been damaged. There's a picture here on the screen that kind of shows the one room in terms of it. Most of the damage is in the classrooms in the hallway. And what ends up happening is the steam, once the pipe breaks, the steam is released into the crawl space. And once the steam connects with our flooring and our wood structures, it doesn't take very long for everything to bow and in a sense come apart and separate. So we've got a really significant amount of damage there. Just a really rough estimate, just from a ballpark, is about $350,000 to $500,000. There's a lot of unknowns in this. All not only the subflooring and the walls also have some asbestos materials in it, we believe. So there'll be an abatement involved in this. And we also have to get a much better look at the steam line to see, where those repairs will take place. So that's, like I said, that's really right now what we're looking at. That's that we can see visibly what it's going to take to repair all the floors in those classrooms, as well as the hallway area. And with this, we also end up with, the possibility, once this wood is saturated, we may see more damage in more rooms on that hallway. So that's really a preliminary look. If school were to reopen on the 15th of May, the school 25 would not be able to come back to their home at the current location. So our plan is to move them to the school number 2, which is right now an empty building, waiting for school 2 to move into it. So we would put them there for the remainder of the school year, and then they would leave so school 2 could move into their new home. Right now, we have not made a final decision on in a sense, how much more we want to invest in this building and do a much more thorough estimate. We're going to have to pull these floors up in order to get an idea of what this actually is going to legitimately cost and take that step further. So with that being said, we do not believe that it's possible for 25 to return here in the fall of 2020 as well. So therefore, our recommendation is to have them move to the Freddie Thomas campus. School 4 is currently using that space as swing space. They'll be moving out in July, so that space will be empty, and we will obviously get it prepared, and school 25 will be able to move in there in July. Since school 4 is using the part of the first floor and all of the third floor, they're actually larger than school 25. So school 25's entire program would fit on the third floor of the Freddie Thomas campus, and they would still be to stay together with their culture as that small school culture that I know they all treasure there. There's certainly some, if we go further with this and we make a decision to not stay in the school 25 building. Remember, we're not closing the school. We're only recommending the building. We would certainly see some projections of savings. We're not yet at a final number on that, but certainly with personnel and utilities, refuse removal and so forth. When they go to Freddie Thomas, we'd be sharing transportation. So that would regain the savings there. And because there's already a custodial staff there, we would also be sharing those resources as well. So it's only been a couple days, so this is really just a real rough estimate, but it really is important to inform you as to where we are. And like I said, we're going to be in there all week. The last point I want to make is we're certainly going to need the teachers to participate in this in terms of getting their rooms organized and packed. Nobody will be going into these rooms that are damaged other than facility personnel. So we've already talked to RTA and their leadership, as well as Deb Lazio, the principal, and their staff. So they have a clear understanding in regards to what the next steps are. And our facilities team has actually already emptied out the majority of the materials that are in those damaged spaces. So with that, I can take any questions. If there are any.
I would just like to say that having been through a case of hardwood floors being ruined by water, it's absolutely heartbreaking to see, and knowing what a great steward you are, Mike, of our buildings, it must just eat away at you to see so much damage done in so little time.
Right. I've never quite seen the floors really buckle, is that they've actually come about 6 or 7 inches off the floor and almost formed a wave down the center of the hallway there. So it's really quite unbelievable in terms of how quickly the water or the steam damage in this can really do a job on it. And it also obviously outlines our risk with all of our wood frame buildings. They all have the wood frame structures with the steam. That's our way of heating it. So we, it just outlines the need to, continue being very vigilant with those. And most of our wood frame structures now have updated mechanical systems. So it's a very different concept than the 25 school, which we've been, as we know, we all been having conversations about for a number of years. Thank you, Commissioner Powell.
Okay, I'm going to jump in because I keep raising my hand. But quick 2 questions, Mike. Was School 25 one of the schools in the second proposal to potentially cut or close?
No, it was not.
Okay. And then my second question is if we have insurance for this.
That's a great question. Right now, we're actually reviewing that with Carl and his team. We have, from my understanding, at least initially, we have boiler insurance, and we also have personal property insurance. So if the teachers had materials in these rooms, that type of thing would be covered. But we don't have insurance that specifically covers this type of a situation. And we have water leaks in buildings quite often, where immediately when the water hits, for example, some of our floors, the floor tiles pop right up immediately. The water just does a very significant amount of damage in a very short amount of time. So it's a very tough item to be able to insure in a district our size with the number of facilities we have.
That's all I had.
Yeah, Commissioner LeBron, I had my mic on mute and I was saying Commissioner LeBron, but you weren't hearing me because my thing was on mute. So any other questions for the superintendent or Mike on that particular issue? I know, Terry, there's more to your report, but anything else on the facilities conversation? Okay, Terry.
All right, Deputy Quick is going to provide the board and the community with an update on our continuity of instruction plan.
Thank you, Terry. Just very briefly, I'll give you a little bit of a history, commissioners. The executive order that was issued by the governor required us to develop 3 different plans. You heard last week about provision of meals from Glenn and his staff, and Mike and his staff. You've heard about childcare, I think in some terms. Our local regional YMCA does provide childcare, of which we monitor the child care offerings on a weekly basis and report those to the governor. And what we're going to report on tonight is obviously our alternative instructional options that are required of us by the executive order. I believe we sent the complete compact for continuation of instruction, if you go to the next page, to you in an earlier email, I believe, but I want to cover some of the highlights of it. First, I want to just to put a shout out to a few people who collaborated in this effort, because it truly was a collaborative effort. And if it wasn't for the efforts of RTA, ASAR, RAP, our chiefs, Keisha, we would not have been able to develop this plan. And it was an evolving plan as we received additional information from State Education Department, as we had additional requirements put upon us by the executive. Our plan had to evolve with those continuing regulations, requirements, and expectations. But our plan basically provides for the adaptation and delivery of learning resources in alternative formats. It also includes that we meet the needs of our special education and L populations. Very importantly, I think it's a good thing to note, our goal in this is to provide a minimum of 2 hours per day of alternative learning time for each student. That is a pretty hefty lift and makes our plan a very robust one. Why would you ask 2 hours per day? Because by state regulation, alternative instruction is at a minimum of 2 hours per day. So that is the standard that we strove to achieve. And again, the Compact for Continuity of Instruction was developed in cooperation with RTA, ACER, and RAP. Methods of delivery of instruction are in a variety of different formats, most of which is left to the teacher's discretion and the building's discretion to implement. Many are using Zoom. Others are using Microsoft Teams, Google Classroom, ClassDojo, emails, text, and phone, depending on the individual needs of the teachers. We are leaving much of this to the teacher's discretion to contact and identify what means of communication is best for individual students. Again, our methods of delivery of instruction vary from digital lessons to online resources. We continue to deliver hard copy packets, and we have videos that are available as well. So I want to break it down by grade bands for you so everybody understands how we're doing the delivery. First, I'll talk about the K-5 teachers. We are developing centralized resources every week. Our teaching and learning team in the central office building is developing resources. They are standards aligned. They're developed in digital format, but they're also available to be printed into hard copy format. They can be accessed at any time by any family at RSCD Learns. We are then printing those copies and delivering to the meal distribution sites so students and parents can pick them up each week. And they are in all of the content areas. So that's the K-5. For our 6-12 students, now that we've rolled out the Chromebooks to our 6-8 population, and as you know, we already had Chromebooks in my 5 units in our 9-12 population, our teachers, 6-12, are coordinating their own online efforts to generate teacher-generated materials for continued instruction. And it's designed to meet their own class needs, their own specific student needs, but it's actually generated by the individual teachers in the 6-12 age range. We are requiring that teachers differentiate opportunities to support individual student needs, just as they would if we were open and operating live. We are meeting all IEP services needs in alternative manners. And this was another conversation that we had to have with RTA to make sure that everybody understood what those were. So Keisha and I met with RTA on more than one occasion to come up with a plan that met state recommendations and federal guidelines. We also support the needs of our L students with accommodations and support. I'm going to get into a little bit about how we're assessing students and tracking students, but we are putting feedback into our Power School system, which is our student management system. That's how we're tracking all of our information, and that's how we're going to actually provide feedback to parents. Our teachers are also offering support for our 6-12 students through the office hour format, where students can actually come to the teacher's office hours. They can talk to the teacher, interact with the teacher. If they do not have access to the office hours, they can then reach out to the teacher and set up other means for communication with the teacher. It could be by phone, text, or email. We had to accommodate our non-classroom teachers and how they would support our plan as well. So they are in supporting our plan doing a number of different things. They actually are assisting our teaching and learning staff in the preparation and rollout of learning materials. They also are holding office hours for our 6-12 students to provide additional support. They participate in team planning meetings and learning activity rollouts on a building level basis to support our reading program and the next generation learning standards. And they also are assisting in maintaining contact with our students on a daily basis. I want to go back to that for just a moment, because one expectation that we have is that teachers are reaching out and contacting students every day. It's not once a week, it's not twice a week, it's every day. Our mental health professionals, that would be our counselors and social workers, are conducting their own outreach to students and families in need. They're offering additional supports, whether it's learning, food, shelter, social services, or helping to meet mental health needs. They're also charged with supporting our students with college and career planning. They're also working with our school teams to ensure that students are meeting their timelines towards graduation. And we know that is absolutely one of your priorities, and we are absolutely meeting all of those needs and intending to graduate any student that we possibly can. They also are assisting in maintaining records of communications with students and families. Our teaching assistants, paraprofessionals, and other support staff are also part of this process. Under the supervision of teachers, our TAs and paras and other support staff are assisting in the delivery of our alternative instruction. They have to continue communicating, collaborating with our school staff to support our students. They're helping to manage records, the resources and materials for our students' learning. They're assisting in the delivery of lesson plans, just like they would if they were live and in class. And they're assisting in the maintaining of regular contact with our students. In other words, if a teacher needs help in reaching out to families, our paras and teacher assistants are doing that as well. Our principals, assistant principals, and other building level administrators have a huge role in helping to support our teachers in the delivery of instruction and in the provision of resources. They're holding building level and team level meetings to develop and implement plans to engage students in this continuity plan. They're facilitating the collaboration and coordination of services across buildings. In other words, they're helping to manage different content areas and how different teachers are engaging with our families. If we have families that we're having a hard time reaching, the principals or other administrators in the building are helping to coordinate and facilitate reaching those families. Our principals and APs have actually delivered devices to homes where necessary. They've delivered packets to homes where necessary so that nobody gets left out. They are reviewing our staff contacts with students, which they can monitor through the use of our student management system. And they can ensure by looking at those contacts that students who have not been reached will be reached. They're coordinating that additional outreach. And through all of this, they are leading our professional learning opportunities, including our upcoming Staff Development Day on May 4th, where we'll be rolling out additional resources for the Next Gen Learning Standards. I want to also talk a little bit more about collaboration and coordination because, again, this is a big lift to put this plan in place. There are a lot of parts and a lot of people that have to come to the table. I want to stress the role of the building level teams and the collaboration and planning that is occurring at the building level every day. Content area teachers are coordinating with counselors, social workers, paraprofessionals, teaching assistants, their principals in making sure that they're delivering instruction across all content areas. Co-teaching pairs and teams are planning together to support student needs. We have our specialists modifying and scaffolding instruction so that individual students are not left out and they can have their content delivered to them appropriately. Staff are participating in professional learning opportunities during our contractual workday. And of course, we have to hold our IEP meetings. We've started those up again. So staff are participating in IEP meetings and annual review meetings at the request of the CSE committee chairs. I know there were questions from the commissioners about grading, and I do want to address what we have developed for grading. And I'm starting with the third quarter because that is actually put in place. We have a plan. In putting this plan in place, we collaborated with the Big Five. We also collaborated with regional schools to understand what everybody was doing. We really wanted to be in lockstep with everybody so that we weren't too far afield from anybody. And we believe we landed on just that. So I want to talk first about K-5. Our students K-5 will receive an NA for each report card grade. In other words, they're not going to get a grade for the third marking period. Teachers will provide comments based upon the work that students have completed prior to March 13th, which is the last day that we were open. Effort and responsibility grades are going to be left blank. We're going to hold the report cards off until May 4th because we had to give teachers an additional opportunity to go in and add to the comments and provide the feedback in Power School. For our 6-12 students, we're only grading assignments up through March 13th. Those are the assignments that will go into the students' grades for the third marking period. Students are not going to be held accountable for not making up missed assignments, and no student will receive an incomplete or failing grade for the third quarter. The lowest grade that a student is going to get for the third quarter is a D or a 65%. And again, just like K-5, report cards will be mailed out the week of May 4th. And lastly, the fourth quarter and the end of the year grade. We are continuing to work on this. We're continuing to look for guidance from state ed and our peer groups, both the Big Five and our regional schools, to define what the fourth quarter progress will look like and what year-end results will look like. We have to consider two scenarios. One, we don't open to the end of the year, and one, we do reopen before the end of the year. So we have to create both scenarios and the options for both. We do expect to have more information forthcoming in the near future. We do have an interdisciplinary team of people working to develop what our options are and to make a recommendation. Does anybody have any questions with regard to our continuity of instruction plan?
I have a question. With regard to the minimum grade that our students will be receiving, what is that lowest grade of a D based on?
We didn't want anyone to be penalized for not being able to complete work and not having access to work for the remainder of the third marking period. So when we actually closed, we were 7 weeks into the third marking period. So we stopped grades at that point, but we also didn't want to penalize students who would not be able to supply makeup work and do additional work. So the lowest grade they could have get is a 65. Of course, if they have a higher grade as of March 13th, a higher grade would apply.
So why not a minimum grade of a C as opposed to a D?
We believe that a 65 was that minimum grade. It's kind of a minimum standard across the region. And so that's where we landed on. Our hope is that the grade would actually be higher and that students would have provided makeup work to go higher, but we didn't want anybody to be below that 65.
I just think that with our students, if we could err on the side of doing something good for our students, my thought is that we could do a minimum of C. But that's, you all make the decision.
Vice President Elliott, we did have a very large group of people that discussed this a lot to make sure that we were being fair and not inflating, but also not allowing students to slip through the cracks and not have the opportunity to graduate or matriculate onto the next grade. Thank you, obviously, for that feedback. As we look at the fourth marking period grade, we will certainly take that under consideration.
But Mr. President, what I would like to offer for us to consider in the policy committee is that we look at increasing the minimum time for alternative learning. So as opposed to a minimum time being 2 hours, that we increase that. I mean, we have a student population that is, in terms of the Big Five, that is very low, if not the last in the Big Five. And if we've got these alternative programs, and then in this particular scenario, that we're only giving students a minimum of 2 hours. I think in the policy development, in the policy area, we need to look at increasing that. And I'd like a policy meeting, just for an example, my sister, who she's in the first grade, but doing second grade work, but she's asking for more work for her to do because she goes through that 2 hour learning, but she'd like for her child to, her grandchild to have more. So she just called me this week about that. And I did put it, contact Marisol about it. So I'm somehow we've got to look at that. I don't know all of the, criteria that's involved in that or all of the considerations, but I certainly think we need to be looking at that for the future, Mr. President.
And something that we really wrestled with is, that's a minimum. So my expectation would be that if that parent is expecting more, that they would reach out to the school, and if they're not getting the assistance that they need, we have great school chiefs and the like that can really work with the families to see how we can provide more. The minimum 2 hours is really tough because one, we don't have devices for our K through 5 students. So we're Mr. Vanderwater and his team have done a stellar job getting devices and Wi-Fi connectivity to 6 through 12. But K-5 is still a struggle. They are very dependent on our parents and some work packets. So agreed that that's a minimum. When we think of 2 hours of alternative instruction for the regular school year, we are looking at other possibilities. That's where we brought up things like Camelot and some other partners that could really change the way we provide instruction through links and the like. So we agree it should be more. We just have to figure out how we can change the model and make sure that we resource it appropriately.
Yeah, well, I'm not talking about right now. I'm just talking about in the future. We need to look at as a policy increasing that. And I don't know if it's 3 hours, it's 4 hours. I think 4 hours is appropriate, but I'm not talking about in the short term. I'm talking about in the long run. Thank you.
Ms. Wade, can you refresh my memory? Who staffs the policy committee for which I'm chair? Or our clerk, could you tell me?
You do, President White.
No. Who staffs it? Who?
Oh, that's me.
Oh, thank you. Could you make sure that gets on our agenda in some time in the near future, that discussion that Vice President Elliott just brought up?
Yes, I have it documented. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner LeBron, it looks like you're raising your hand.
Yeah. So I just want to say right now, as a mom of a third grader, 2 hours is plenty, because if she was in school, them 2 hours would be broken up into 30 minutes or 45-minute increments, breaks, a movement, some smaller group projects with the kids that are more hands-on versus, I don't want my child sitting in front of a computer for 4 hours learning at third grade. So I just want to throw that out there. But if there are parents who want to have that for their child, that's their right. I will support it. I agree that it should go back to the school. And I will continuously give Miss Smith, who's my daughter's third grade teacher, lots of kudos and credits, because she is constantly posting projects, links. I have to reach out to her sometimes and ask her to slow down on my behalf, because I got to keep up with how Sophia is managing this stuff too. I think for me, my only question around this is slide 16, and because it relates to K-5, and obviously I want to understand what to expect in terms of report card. It says report cards are going to be mailed the week of May 4th. The effort and responsibility grades are going to be left blank, and students will receive the non-applicable for each report card grade. But the teachers are going to provide comments based on their work as students completed to March 13th. So the scenario of us not returning to school this year, I get a report card from my daughter's teacher sometime after May 4th, shortly a few days after. Will I be, if we're not opening schools again, and I know it's up in the air because we're waiting on Governor Cuomo's executive order, does that mean my third grader repeats third grade or passes third grade? How does that work?
So if I can jump in, Commissioner LeBron, that's a great question. So
yeah.
When we started our continuity of instruction, we really were repeating and reinforcing the work that students had done all year. That was the beginning. And then we converted, and you're going to be starting to see for your daughter new instruction from now until the end of the year. I can see you're happy about that. And you're going to be helping her learn math facts and all kinds of fun stuff. But we will be doing new instruction from now until the end of the year. And your teachers are tracking in Power School. You won't see this part of it right away, but they're tracking their contact with their students. And they're also tracking what they're delivering to the students and keeping notes on that so they can share them with you. And you'll get that at some point in the means of a fourth quarter report card, but it's allowing them to support your child and every other child by scaffolding the materials, reaching out and saying, I don't know if you understood this part as your child is, submitting an assignment, and perhaps they missed a concept. So they can provide feedback to you and your daughter to say, here's some additional things that maybe you need to look at with regard to this particular concept. So it's allowing us to provide feedback, but not a grade. So you're not going to see an A, B, C, D. You're not going to see an S or an I. You're going to see feedback in a narrative format as they are engaging with your kids on skills and concepts.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, because that also can prepare me to understand that the online materials that were being posted in the beginning was just more reinforcement of what was already learned. But now the expectation is that moving forward is perhaps introducing new concepts with the mixture of reinforcing the foundation that they would have gotten before pre-COVID-19. I did get the opportunity to be in one of the Zoom classes with them. So School 15, Sophia's third grade class, you know, they have that co-teaching model. So there's 2 teachers on both sides and they're mixed, multiple language learners with English learners. So I did have the opportunity by default, because we were taking my grandson to an appointment, to be in the Zoom classroom. I didn't want to be, I like them to have their privacy, but we were in the car. And I really do appreciate all the teachers that participated. But I also want to appreciate that there was a social worker that came in, and I think that was their first time since all this happened, just checking in with the kids little by little. And I just appreciate those things. I know people are doing their best effort in that regard to provide services in a very uncharted and traditional ways, if I will say. So, all right, thank you guys. I appreciate getting that updated and that understanding.
Any other questions? Terry, was that portion of the presentation complete?
Yes, just if there's any other questions.
Any other questions for the superintendent or Ms. Quick?
I just have a quick comment.
Commissioner Malloy?
Hi. I just wanted to agree with Commissioner LeBron that I really don't want to see my own kids sitting in front of a computer for more than 2 hours per day. It's been hard for them to adjust to online learning. I think that's the case for a lot of our students across the district, and some kids still don't even have access to that. So I think that we want to be really careful before we load up kids on this new type of learning, because a lot of our teachers are still trying to figure it out themselves. However, I will say this, kudos to every teacher in this school district. We've, I have 4 children, and we're often doing 5 or 6 Zoom meetings around the house at the same time. And I found out from, big shout out to Miss Flanders from School 58, because I found out that one of my daughters was not completing her Zoom meeting. She would take the computer downstairs and had been reporting to us that she was already done. And we got a postcard today in the mail stating that she had not interacted with her Zoom classes for over a week. So thank you, Miss Flanders, for alerting us to that, and we'll try to get right on that. But I also want to give a shout out to all the teachers who are delivering things to people's homes. Our 15-year-old's music teacher delivered her clarinet to our home. That's how I found out that she wasn't practicing her clarinet. But kudos to all of you for adjusting during this unprecedented time. And I am so appreciative as a parent. It's really hard for me to keep track of it and do my, figure things out for my own students in my own school. So I am just so appreciative of the work that I see being done across the district. I am interested, though, if there are students who want to have enrichment work, as Ms. Elliott was talking about, what I'd like to make sure that we have enrichment opportunities available to students who do want to sit for a longer period of time in front of a computer. So thank you.
Let me
Vice President, your hand, but Vice President, if you all could do me a favor, I know Commissioner Shepard has raised her hand on the Zoom device. Because there's so many people on this Brady Bunch screen that I can't always see people raise their hand. So please, if you could, use that raise your hand function, because if you're not physically on my screen, I can't see you waving your hand. So Vice President, I did see you wave your hand, and then we'll go to Commissioner.
I just don't want Commissioner LeBron or Commissioner Malloy to assume I meant the being in front of a computer. I'm just saying that kids in this district need more alternative learning. I don't care how it's done. We just need to look at that as a policy. That's what I'm saying. So I didn't say that they had to be on the screen. You both said that. So let me just clarify that. So however it's done, if it's through enrichment, but in some way that our children are continuing to learn, because we have to make sure that we continue the learning so that they're able to compete in the global marketplace. So however it's
Vice President, it looks like your screen is frozen, but I think you were finished. So I'm going to move on to, you said Vice President Elliott? Okay. Commissioner Shepard?
Yes, I have a couple questions. So our students from K through 5, is the administration still moving on attempting to get those students Chromebooks?
Yeah, this is a complicated piece, and Mr. Vanderwater can chime in to probably add some more details. So my understanding is that through the 1 Million Foundation, we're all set for 9th through 12th. We did a redistribution, we fixed Chromebooks. They have Wi-Fi devices, so we were good there. We then deployed to 6 through 8. So Chromebooks have been deployed, but we are still, Mr. Vanderwater, are we still waiting on the MiFi order for 6 through 8?
Yes, we are. They should be in 3 weeks, and we will deploy them as soon as we get them.
So the dilemma, Commissioner Shepard, is one, we did an inventory of the older Chromebooks that are throughout the division, and we felt very comfortable with regards to how we were cycling through older technology and bringing in newer technology. We were very comfortable with deploying those Chromebooks out to our 6th through 8th grade students. K through 5 is a beast. There's a lot of students. It would require more Chromebooks than we actually have. And by the time we actually deployed, we would actually be getting close to the end of the year. So it's this push and pull of what is the benefit that we're going to garner in a few weeks versus our obligation to make sure that all of our students have access to technology when we do open on May 15th or the like. So we did do a survey of 3 through 5. So we do have, I believe, that data, but I'll let Mr. Vanderwater speak to that.
Yes, thank you. And before I go any further, it meant a lot to the team, the board's recognition last week. It really did. We saw all the weather that Rochester had to throw at us while we were out there, and it was greatly appreciated. In talking about deployment of Chromebooks in grades 3 through 5 is what I've kind of worked up. That's approximately 6,000 students. There's some considerations when deploying and dropping down to those grade levels. We would be moving devices, our newer devices with 4 or 5 years of life, warranty life on them, out to our youngest students. And I know my own home, accidents happen. And there's some risk with that in terms of even data that we have from our help desk queues as to devices such as cracked screens, broken palm rests, things like that, happening at the lower grade levels just due to the nature of those of children handling devices. We would take into account that instead of the Chromebooks moving back into a Chrome cart in a classroom in a very safe location, they'd be in a free-floating type environment. So there's some risk there. And if we start talking about the deployment of, and again, I'm rounding numbers. We talk about the deployment of 6,000 Chromebooks at $400 a Chromebook, it comes out to about $2.4 million worth of devices moving out into homes. And that, again, is a consideration that we have to take into account.
Any other questions for the superintendent or Mr.
Yes,
Van?
I have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
Our students with disabilities, I know that we have changed to some alternative ways of supporting them, but I wanted to know specifically, do those recommendations that we have right now, do the supports that we provide to families in their home, do they still align towards moving us toward our goals that we have to meet?
Mr. Shepard, I'll take a shot at this. So we worked very hard with the RTA and really appreciate the cooperation in working through some of the unique issues that we have in servicing our special education students. We are providing all of the IEP services in alternative formats, and that does look different than the original IEP did because it's obviously harder to counsel when you're counseling over the telephone or a Zoom call. So our staff are developing distance learning plans for how we provide those IEP services during this closure. It is in cooperation with parents whenever we can possibly do that. But our related service staff, our classroom teachers in the special education division are actively working to implement those distance learning plans and to meet all of the needs that are on a student's IEP during this time.
Any other questions? Doesn't look like it. All right, Superintendent Dade, did that conclude your report?
Yes, but I see Vice President Elliott giving us a little wave.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Superintendent, what's been the parents' response to this alternative learning, and what's been some of their challenges during this time?
So having kids of my own and hearing a lot from parents across not just Rochester, but across the nation, it is a struggle. There's complexities with mom or dad telling you to do something that's not like Miss Jones. So the school dynamic looks different in a home than it does in brick and mortar. There's more distractions. So once you get into high school, the great struggle is they look at their screen for content for 15 minutes and then they're on TikTok or something else for another 15 minutes. So the distractions are real. The ability to provide lessons in a live format and the like is a struggle. And then the differentiation, I heard the first story of a classroom management problem on screen. So these are things that we would just never, ever think about, but I would be remiss if I said everything was going smooth, because I know in my own household, it's not smooth. There's arguments and I'm not doing this, or I'm tired of whatever. So I think our teachers and staff are doing an amazing job with providing the content and trying to provide some structure. But these are unprecedented times, and I know that I'm hearing from parents that they are even more thankful for teachers now. They can't wait till the first day of school back to get our babies back in brick and mortar. So I think it's going as well as we could hope with these unprecedented times, but I know from parents, it is not easy. They became educators overnight, and we're expecting the world from them to not only do lessons, but to cook, clean, go to the dentist, go shopping, all amidst, and keep people healthy all at the same time. So the struggle has been real.
Yeah, ergo, the reason the liquor stores are open.
Amen to that. Those are essential products and workers at this time.
The workers,
Thank you.
All right, excellent. We know where to get see the essential workers. Any other questions or comments for the superintendent other than where to get your emotional relief? No further questions? We're good. All right, next item on the agenda is consideration of resolutions. Before I do that, though, I want to ask my colleagues, in examining the resolutions or having looked through them in advance, are there any particular resolutions that you feel we will need to go into executive session? We already are going to have a confidential session with our general counsel. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. Are there any resolutions that you think, given your having looked at the packet, you may need to go into executive session? And if you don't say anything now, it doesn't mean that you can't say it later on, but I thought I might try to get that out of the way now. Well, I haven't heard anything, but again, you reserve the right, of course.
Van, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you. Go ahead.
Oh, 871. I do want to talk about that one in executive session further.
Sounds good. Anybody else want to just give me notice of what you might want to talk about in executive session? Okay, so we'll just begin with that one, but there may be others added later on. And for those listening that aren't familiar, executive session is called for sometimes because you don't want to reveal the name of an employee, or maybe there's a contractual issue where negotiations are involved. And so we have the option when there are sensitive issues like that to have a private conversation about that employee or those particular negotiations. So, but rest assured that nothing we discuss in executive session can be voted on. If ultimately a decision is made based on some conversation in executive session, that vote has to take place in the public setting. So, all right, having said that, one other thing. Mr. Franklin, I owe you an apology. I saw a client yesterday. His name was Mr. Fitzgerald. I think earlier today I called you Bob Fitzgerald. I apologize for that. And of course, you know, I was thanking you for your service to that committee. So thanks a lot. Sorry about that.
Been called worse. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right. The next item on the agenda is consideration of resolutions. I need a motion to discuss resolution 822-875. Is there a motion?
So moved. This is what.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Is there any questions or comments regarding resolution 875? There being no, yes, Commissioner Powell?
Trying to second, is that right?
Yeah, I was trying to second, yes.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Any questions or comments regarding resolution 875? There being no questions or comments, all those in favor of resolution 875 say aye. Aye. Opposition?
Aye.
Hearing no opposition, that resolution 875 passes.
I'm sorry, you skipped to 875. My packet starts at 822.
I'm sorry, it was the first item on the agenda. So you know, we have technically voted on 875.
On the current version, 875 is all the way at the end, but I'm going to be voting no on that one.
All right. Yeah.
President White,
Yes, ma'am.
on the agenda, we begin at 822 under RCSD Other. The one we're looking at shows all of the resolutions are 822 to 875.
So all the resolutions are 875. Is that what you're saying?
No.
No, sir. The compilation of resolutions go from number 822 to 875.
That's
You
the
start
range.
at 822. Yes, sir.
I see. I misunderstood. Thank you, Commissioner LeBron, for pointing out. What I failed to see is that it's just a description of the range of resolutions for today.
Right.
So thank you for pointing that out, Commissioner LeBron. Thank you, our clerk, for the clarification. But we have voted on 875, and Commissioner LeBron has voted no to that particular resolution. So when we get down there, we won't have to vote on that particular resolution. So beginning with.
Pardon, I thought I was moving 822.
Oh, well, we did vote on 875.
All right, let me dash down there and make sure I'm still a yes.
Sure. Okay. I apologize for that confusion, folks.
Okay, I'm still a yes.
You're still yes. Thank you very much. And again, I apologize for that confusion. Now let's move to resolution 822. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? To advance discussion on resolution 822. Now, normally, folks, I don't take a second on these. I just say, is there a motion to advance it for discussion? And if I get that, we have a discussion, and then we vote on the particular resolution after discussion. So there was a motion to advance for discussion resolution 822. That was made by Commissioner Powell, I believe. Is there any questions or comments regarding resolution 822? There being no questions or comments, all those in favor of resolution 822, say aye. Aye. Any opposition?
Well, aren't we supposed to go to the Brady Bunch screen for this part?
Well, it does help. I know they're trying to be very helpful by letting us see the screen, but thank you, Commissioner Powell, for pointing that out. If you all could, and I know you guys are doing a lot of stuff at one time, as soon as we call for the vote, if you could switch back from the document to the Brady Bunch screen, we could see each other vote. Thank you very much. So let's just make sure we're all on the same page. All those in favor of resolution 822, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
You guys really have to say aye, or we have to. Thank you very much.
No.
All right. And any opposition? There being no opposition, that resolution passes. I need a motion to discuss Resolution 824 through 825. These are resolutions that relate to the granting of tenure and extending the probationary period.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Is there a second? I think I heard, was that you, Commissioner Ack? Oh, it was Vice President Elliott. Any questions or comments regarding resolutions 824 through 825?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so I just want to put it again for the record, and every time it comes up, I will keep doing it as long as we're out of school, that I'm not comfortable voting on tenure for a time that has not yet occurred or a date. And I recognize that there's a method for the district to do this, but I'm just not comfortable doing that. And I just want to be very clear that it is not that I don't think that the individuals do not have outstanding evaluations or should be merited tenure. It is simply on the premises that we're not in school and that evaluation may or may not occur, even if it backtracks. I'm just not comfortable with voting based on future dates. I just want to put that out there. That's it.
All right, thank you very much. Those were resolutions 824 to 825. Any further questions or comments regarding those resolutions? Nope. So we'll take a vote. All those in favor of resolutions 824 and 825, say aye.
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 No.
Thank you. We got the no from Commissioner LeBron. The rest were yes. Those two resolutions pass. Next, we want to turn our attention to resolutions 836 to 837, resignation resolutions. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Vice President Elliott, seconded by Commissioner Malloy. Any questions or comments regarding resolutions 836 and 837? I don't hear any questions, so let's take a vote. All those in favor of resolutions 836 to 837, resignation resolutions, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? I didn't hear any opposition, so the ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if I'm going too fast, I'm sure you'll let me know. I next need a motion to discuss resolutions 838, 839. Yes, ma'am. Did you say something, Vice President Elliott?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay, all right. I next need a resolution to discuss, a motion to discuss resolutions 838, 839, and 841. Is there a motion?
Motion.
I think I heard Commissioner LeBron. I think I heard Amy Malloy. I second that. Any questions or comments regarding resolutions 838, 839, 841? There being no questions or comments, all those in favor of resolutions 838, 839, 841 signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? The ayes have it. Next, we turn our attention to resolutions 848 and 849, additional pay resolutions. Is there a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. Second? Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Any questions or comments regarding additional pay authorizations 848 through 849? There being no questions.
Actually,
Yes,
I just want to put on the record that I won't be supporting these primarily because school's not open right now, and I just do not believe that school is going to open. Supported them last time with the hope that school was going to be open, but I would prefer that we put these on hold for now, but I will support with the will of the board and the superintendent putting it forth. So, but I just won't vote on it. Again, nothing against these individuals personally.
absolutely. Any further questions or comments regarding resolutions 848 and 849?
I do have a
Yes. Commissioner.
Part of resolution 849 is professional development. I presume that is it safe to presume that that is being conducted via Zoom or some other distance learning platform?
Superintendent Dade?
I'm looking to see what that entails. So Deputy Quick, do you have that at your fingertips?
Hold on one sec.
This is
we are continuing with professional development, and just Going over here to look at the specific. Did you have a specific question on any of these?
No, I asked because from the standpoint of, people giving an honest day's work for an honest day's pay, if, even without us being physically present in schools, folks should be able to receive a stipend if they're doing professional development.
Absolutely, and we are continuing with our professional development. It's an important part of our continuity of instruction plan.
Any further questions regarding resolutions 848 and 849? There being no further questions or comments, all those in favor of resolutions 848 and 849 signify by saying aye. Aye. Any
No.
any
No.
opposition? I think I heard 2 noes. I hope that the clerk heard that as well. I think it was Commissioner LeBron and Vice President Elliott. Assume the clerk has recorded that. Next, folks, I need a resolution to discuss budget amendment resolutions 850 to 853. Is there a motion? Thank you, Commissioner Powell. I think I saw Commissioner Malloy second it. Any questions or comments regarding resolutions 850 through 853? If you could turn to the full screen in case anybody is raising their hand, I can see it. Thank you. Doesn't seem that there are any questions or comments regarding resolutions 850 through 853. And for those who don't have the opportunity to see it, those are budget amendment resolutions. If there's no further comment, let's take a vote. All those in favor of resolutions 850 to 853, say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Seems that the ayes have it, Madam Clerk. Next, let's turn our attention to resolution 854, authorization to enter into a contract. Is there a motion to advance this particular resolution for discussion?
So moved.
Commissioner Malloy, there's a second. I think I heard Commissioner Powell. Thank you, commissioners. Any questions or comments regarding resolution 854? There being no questions, let's go ahead and vote on that resolution. All those in favor of resolution 854, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Seems that the ayes have it. I'm going to break up the next column of resolutions. I need a motion to discuss resolutions 855 through 858. These are final payment resolutions. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Seconded by Commissioner LeBron. Any questions or comments regarding these final pay resolutions described as resolutions 855 through 858? Madam Clerk, it doesn't seem that there are any questions or comments, so we're going to go ahead and vote. All those in favor of resolutions 855 through 858, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Ayes have it. Next, I need a resolution to discuss now. Be patient with me here for a second. Resolutions 859 through 868, which would include 859, 860, 862, 863, 864, 865, 866, 867, and 868. These resolutions relate to the award of a contract. They're not sequential. There's, I think, one sequential number missing, which is 861, but it's 859 through 868. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Seconded by, I think I saw Commissioner Malloy raise her hand.
That wasn't me.
What's that?
It was me, Van.
LeBron moved it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So Commissioner LeBron made the motion. Commissioner Malloy seconded it. Is there any questions or comments regarding these resolutions that relate to the awarding of contracts from the RCSD? Seems that there's no question, so let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor of resolutions 859 through 868, of course, that excludes resolution 861, signify your vote by saying aye or nay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Any opposition? I heard Commissioner LeBron say nay.
No,
Any
I said
other?
aye.
Oh, you said aye? Okay.
I said aye.
So it's unanimous then. All right, folks, we're almost there. We are now moving on to other resolutions, and they are sequential 869 through 875, with the exception of 871, which we are going to discuss in executive session. Is there a motion?
Which number?
President White.
869 through 875, with the exception of 871, which I believe, Commissioner LeBron, you wanted to go into executive session on that one. Is that right?
Yes, I'll make the motion for it, but yeah.
President White, you already voted on 875, so
that's
that does not belong in that sequence.
That's right. Thank you very much for reminding me. So the motion that I need is to advance for discussion resolutions 869 through 874 with the exclusion of resolution 871. Is there a motion? Thank you very much, Commissioner LeBron. Is there a second? Just need a second, folks, to get us to the finish line. Commissioner Malloy, thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments regarding these variety of resolutions that address a number of different issues and needs of the district? If you could switch back to the full screen, thank you very much. There being no, Commissioner Powell?
I have a question about attendance. I see Natalie is not on the participants anymore, and I don't know how long ago she dropped off, so that the minutes will reflect the accurate count.
I have it, Commissioner Powell.
What's that?
I have already recorded it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so her internet pretty much dropped, and so she had to restart her laptop, just so you guys know. So she's working on getting back on as well.
Thank you. We are all so busy looking at our packets and other things. We are quite dependent on our staff to keep track of who's on and who's off. And I know that Ms. Lopez accurately records the votes only of those folks that are here. All right, we took a vote on those resolutions. Is that right, Madam Clerk?
We did the motion.
We did the motion. Okay. All right. Thank you. I got a little bit sidetracked. Any questions or comments regarding resolutions 869 through 874 with the exclusion of resolutions 871? There being no questions or comments, all those in favor of resolutions 869 through 874 with exclusion of 871 signify by saying aye.
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 So not aye for me, but so I'm going to roll call the ones I'm going to support tonight.
All right.
So 869 is yes for me. 871 we're putting on hold. 872 is a yes. 873 is a no. And 874 is a yes.
All right. You got that, Madam Clerk? Yep. All right. All right. So that completes the presentation of resolutions. We next move on to unfinished business or old business. And as I promised earlier on, we would have a follow-up conversation to my president's report on the recommendation that I'm making to the board based on the EPO's meeting with the district staff. The recommendation that I am making is that you accept as part of our ongoing budget development that the University of Rochester reduce its spending by 20%. Again, there was an agreement by the participants, as I understand, that the baseline where their budget began was $22.9 million, reduced by 20%. That would place the budget at $18.32 million. That is a $4.58 million reduction. As I indicated, that group, thankfully, will continue to meet on Friday. But my recommendation is that we add this new and significant decrease to our budget tabulations, as we have stuff in the budget right now that may in fact still change. So that's where the group, and again, I want to express my thanks to the board for letting these folks come together and trying to see if they could speak a common language and come to a common agreement. I see that both Superintendent Dade and Superintendent Nelms are here. Either one of them can speak up, but I know Commissioner Braun, you've raised your hand. Commissioner LeBron?
Yeah, so I was going to unmute myself, but I'm already unmuted. I guess for me, I would like to hear from Superintendent Dade or Linda, either of the two, because I know that Linda, you were at the meeting, that the 4.5 does not reflect 6. And so I guess for me, the question then becomes, where will the additional 1.5 million to really close the entire gap from? And if you guys have any ideas or thoughts around that.
Yeah, I didn't participate in the meeting, but I would love for Deputy Quick to, the takeaways from the meeting are a little bit different than was described by the team to me. So if you can just clarify.
I'd be glad to, and I hope I capture the essence of the meeting. I do think it was a productive meeting. We met for approximately an hour. And to President White's point, we did start at a starting point of the 22.9 figure. We, during that conversation, arrived at approximately $2 million that we identified as an agreed upon savings that we both at that meeting agreed to, as far as staff reductions and benefit reductions as part of that, as well as some grant dollars. We did agree to come back tomorrow to try and discuss additional reductions. I believe the East staff, along with U of R and Steve Ubing, we're going to go back and look at additional options. So we did not hear about 4.5 million and what that is. So I would love to see what those cuts really are. We did agree to the sharing of information. We were going to share some ratios that we use to identify our staffing for our schools, and they were going to share back the contents of the collective bargaining agreements and the amendments to the collective bargaining agreements that they have in place. So we were going to share that out and then talk more tomorrow.
Okay, so I just want to clarify. You're saying right now, your understanding is that the reduction really was just 2 million that was identified and not the 4.5. Because I'm not comfortable right now putting forth a budget vote or amendment on a budget to go from 6 to 2 or say 4.5 and no, we don't have that number figured out with concrete evidence. And I'm still curious if the final number is going to be 4.5 million, where, if you guys have some ideas where the additional 1.5 million will come from.
Let me say there could have been a communication with President White about where that 4.5 is. We would love to see what actually makes up those numbers, and we'll probably hear that tomorrow during our meeting. And then we can actually go back and have Bob and Brian run it from our perspective. We did not have a conversation about the additional 1.5, and that's something that we'll have to go back to the drawing board and look for if the board agrees that the reductions at East are 4.5. We have not gotten to that point yet.
Superintendent Nelms, do you want to add anything to this conversation?
Yeah, I think that Linda is absolutely right. Tomorrow, the teams will continue to meet. I believe the starting point is where there's been a bit of confusion. I know there's been a lot of confusion since last week about our budget. I'll just reiterate that our budget is at the discretion of the EPO, and the board will make a request for us to make a reduction. So the request from Terry Day for us to cut $6 million wasn't, I'm not saying, no, we all know that now that we understand receivership, it wasn't an inappropriate request. We should never have been requested to cut any dollars from Terry or his team. But we realized that there was just some confusion around the powers of the receiver. We wanted to continue to work collaboratively with him. And the decision was to go back and look at our budget, to do our due diligence, and to try to get to a number that would be supported by the board. And it was up to the board to make that request. And so we're prepared to go back and look at that, look at our budget. Tomorrow's meeting is not just to discuss East, it's also to discuss efficiencies for the district so that the board could have a balanced budget overall. And we're prepared to do that. So the details of that will be shared tomorrow with the finance team, and we'll discuss what our revisions are, and I'm certain that their team will discuss their revisions. But the meeting was productive. Both sides were able to talk about the receivership, we're talking about the RCSD fiscal crisis, and all focus on trying to do the right thing for kids. So I just want to be clear that the request to reduce our spending can only come from the board. And I'm taking the president's words tonight as a request, and we're going to honor that. I think that it's a steep cut, but I think it's one we'll all have to make across the district. And Terry made that clear about the steepness of cuts throughout the district, and we've made it clear that we've been doing that. But that we could actually do more, and this is our attempt to do that. So this is in good faith. It's in good spirit. We're all trying to work towards a better tomorrow, and I hope that the board sees it that way. I hope Terry and his team sees it that way, and we can put this behind us and move forward as a school community.
I see Commissioner LeBron is raising her hand.
Yeah, so I guess for me, I just want to be clear that the directive for both sides to meet did come from the board. That was at the discretion of the board. And I want to put it out there that it was not just Terry that gave the $6 million suggestion in the cut. I also presented that as a board member to my fellow colleagues. Now, if this board chooses not to go that route, then the board has to understand that the cuts have to come from somewhere else within the entire RCSD. And so I don't know where, Van, you got the $4.5 million from, but it's a number that was mentioned briefly earlier with the follow-up conversation to be had here. So can you tell me where you got the number for 4.5 million from?
My mathematics may not be the most accurate. What I did is I took the baseline that I understood they agreed to, which was 22.9 million, multiplied that by 20%, and I get 18.32 million. That's a $4.58 million reduction, according to my mathematics. Now, I defer to the financial people, but so it's not 6 million, it's 4.58. And again, the board can, and we can go into confidential, and it might be helpful, confidential session with our general counsel, because what Mr. Nelms, Dr. Nelms has referred to repeatedly is the status of the EPO as a receiver. And I'm not the person to offer up that description. Mr. Christoph could do that in executive session. And I just want you all to know it's not Sean drawing a line in the sand. He's regurgitating or offering up what the law says about receivers. And I think many of you may know what their status is. So that's how I got the number, Commissioner. And if my mathematics are wrong, I apologize, but I think it's $4.58 million in reductions. From 22.9, you take 20% off that, it's $4.58 million.
But
not,
Linda
go ahead.
said that the agreement was the two. So for me, I just have to say, for me, we're towards the finish line here of a budget, and we have not reached 6. And where will 6 come from? I think that is my biggest concern right now. Where will we bridge to another 6? Sean has said it's not up to the superintendent. That's fine. So I'm having a conversation with the board at this time around where $6 additional million will come from. And if they're meeting, you wanted us to vote tonight on this 4.5 million, and they haven't even gotten there. They've gotten to 2 million. So I'm just really confused about this, but we don't have time for the confusion because we still have to vote on May 7th. So if the board has a different alternative to where we're gonna get to 6, or what a solid number should be for East, then this is the time to have that conversation.
So let me see if anybody else wants to comment before I take the floor again. Let me repeat, Commissioner LeBron, as you have said repeatedly, that $6 million is your figure. The board doesn't, as a collective, has to make a decision together. The EPO, pursuant to the receivership law, has come up with some additional reductions. It may not satisfy your figure of $6 million. You keep on saying, well, where's the extra money going to come from? Well, the board may decide that, in fact, that extra money doesn't, to the extent someone has to get to 6, doesn't have to come from East. They've offered up 20% reduction. So again, you're right. We agreed that the board has,
20%, and it's not 4.5 million.
We've agreed that the board has to decide what that number is. The board could decide it's 6 million. The board could decide it's 4.5 million, could decide that it's 5 million, or the board could decide, as I said earlier on, that let's have them talk some more. I just came up with a recommendation. And by the way, you're right, we don't have a lot of time left, but as you and I have agreed very recently, there are other numbers that aren't clear either, and we continue to work on them, and we try to get to some agreement on that. So I don't want to miss the point that officials from the district and from East work together collectively to come up with some kind of compromise. I don't want that point to be lost, and they made some movement, whether it is 4.58 or 6. The board has to decide what the amount of additional contribution East will make. And I'm asking the board to consider that. But as I said earlier on, if the board wants to wait to see what happens Friday, I told you all they'd be meeting Friday. We can do that. I'm not averse to that. And make sure that the numbers are straight and they give us the numbers collectively. That's fine with me. I don't know how Terry or Sean feel about that, but I'm good with that. I said that earlier on.
Again, my only reason for being on tonight is to do what the board individually and as a collective board has asked us to do, and that's to go back and look at our numbers and to try to support the overall fiscal issues of the district. Continue to do that. We've done that every single year. We actually proposed before the request a 9% reduction. And to, I think what happened last week created a lot of anxiety. Cooler heads prevailed, and I think we're trying to do what's best, and that's it. And I don't think tonight was about voting for anything. It was us signaling to Terry and his team and to the board that we're willing to support the recommendations and to move forward. So this is all in good faith, all in good spirit, and trying to do our due diligence and do our part to support the overall district. So there's no malintent. We're just trying to be positive and be collaborative in this process.
Sean, I think that's all good and well. And, for me as a board member, I'm asking my colleagues to figure out whether they decide that make that tonight or not, or wait till you guys have another meeting. There has to be some final, a final figure, if you will, that the board has to collectively decide. Now, yes, I personally propose 6. The superintendent also put out 6, and it's not his purview, but he put it out there. But the board hasn't decided, and Van presented 4.5 million and cuts that don't exist. That's my understanding right now. Maybe I'm tripping, I don't know, but I just don't know where the other 2.5 came from. But at the end of the day, we still have 6 million overall to cut. And I know that you're saying, Van, that it's going to come from other schools. And I'm telling you, if you look through our school profiles, they ain't got it. They do not have it. They are already, every single high school is expected to have some type of cut right now in the current budget proposal. So I just want to throw that out there, but the board needs to figure it out.
Chair Adams, were you trying to say something?
Yeah, I was trying to just be clear, since we're just throwing this all out here tonight. I was clear. With that 6 figure, I was clearly opposed against this, and I just had to put that out there that I never supported 6 million. So I just needed to put that out there, and I still don't.
Anybody else want to be heard on the subject? Commissioner Powell?
Yeah, I wonder, with the accountants in the room, Catherine Barrett, and I wonder if the auditor from the Office of the Comptroller had a chance to weigh in about the accounting methods, particularly special fund. I think Bob Franklin and I had a brief exchange by email, superintendent copied in, about what Mr. Brian Winkler had to say. I wonder if that was part of this discussion today.
So I was in the first 10 minutes of that meeting, then I jumped off. I just wanted to introduce the U of R team to Barb and Kathy. And they were discussing all types of scenarios, including the ones that you suggested, Willa, for cuts. And so, again, the intent of tonight was to inform the board that we are continuing to work The real work will happen within those work sessions. The next second one is tomorrow, I believe at 2, where Terry's team and the U of R's folks will get together and work out these details. I think the intent was to alleviate some of the anxiety that was caused last week, because both sides were not informed about some decisions, and trying to be open about that and to let the folks work the details tomorrow. That was the intent. And it was, again, being done in good faith, in good spirit, and trying to bring some positive news to the budget cycle and to continue to look for other efficiencies. We believe that there are dollars that the district will still find, and there are dollars that that the EPO will still find as they discuss effective practices with Barb and Kathy, and as they discuss different ways and how to use some grant funds here and there. And I think there's a lot more to be done with the budget, and I think both sides would agree with that. And I would say let the two teams do it, and do what's best for kids and families in the community.
So are there any other questions?
Van, I would only suggest that
Yes, ma'am.
there is just enough ambiguity here that I would not feel comfortable with a vote. However, it might be a good idea to make it clear the scope of what we're currently talking about. If the superintendent, if Superintendent Day needs to find another $1.5 million, then he needs time to do that. I do have some suggestions, actually, but I don't know if we do that by straw poll or what, but I'm with Commissioner Adams. I never signed on to 6 million. I'm happy to see that there's movement, but I think it's premature to lock in on any number.
That's fair enough. They have a meeting set for tomorrow. Sean just indicated that a few minutes ago. I indicated that on the top of my comments. Let me just explain. One of the reasons why I offered up that is, one, the receivership law indicates that the receiver has to get a decision from the board. If they reject that, the board's decision, the law says they go to the commissioner, not to, again, no shade on Terry. They don't go to Terry, they go to the commissioner. So at some point, as you're right, we have to lock that number in. And the other reason why that number has to be locked in is so that if, as Commissioner Adams says, as you said, Commissioner Powell, I never signed on to $6 million. If we don't agree that $6 million is a figure, but let's say it is 4.5 million, that number has to be locked in at some point. Doesn't have to be today. So that if there is additional money that is needed, we have to figure out as a board or through the superintendent where that money is going to come from. So, there's been a constant conversation of we got to move this budget along, and we do. But I'm not arguing. I don't think that Dr. Nelms is arguing with the fact that, they want some, I think Commissioner LeBron, I heard you, Commissioner Powell, say you want some clarity about those numbers. I think they can probably provide that between now and our next meeting.
I would like to request this in writing.
I'm sorry,
Dan.
say that again?
But I would like to request those numbers in writing.
Sure, absolutely. Sean, your team can do that?
Every year we give our budget, it's in writing to the detail.
No.
Yeah. We'll continue.
Talking about the cuts. I would like to see the actual cuts in writing and the total amount. The other question, Van, that I have, you just mentioned it would go to the commissioner. So are you saying we could separate the East budget on May 7th if we don't come to an agreement or ask the commissioner to interject and give an opinion on this?
What I suggested a few minutes ago is that we should talk to Carl. Carl is, as you know, our reliable general counsel. It's been a while since we talked about receivership law. It was prior to Terry getting here. We had a thorough explanation of what that involved, what their rights were. It is a whole new set of laws that we don't talk about. And I think it might be good to get a refresher course on that, because I think one of the things that Dr. Nelms is saying, and one of the things we talked about before, because we used to talk about, some of you before you got here, we used to talk about the temporary receivers and then the de facto receiver. It's a very complicated law, but there are specific rights and responsibilities that receivers have that are separate and apart from the district. And my recollection is they present their budget to the board. And then if the board doesn't agree with it, then they get to appeal to the commissioner. But again, I could be all wrong about that. We should talk to Carl in a confidential session and he can describe that.
Okay.
And by the way, that will give us time to get the detail that you all want from Dr. Nelms. Commissioner Powell?
Yeah, I just want to say, while we still have an online audience, that this difficulty that we're facing right now was inevitable given the construction of the receivership law. I mean, 2 superintendents in 1 district. It was inevitable in a constricting financial environment that we would be facing this kind of conflict. And the surprise is only that we got this far, this many years into an EPO before it erupted. That's all. I just want to say that for the viewing public.
Any other? I think we're in agreement about what should happen next. There'll be no vote, no straw vote or anything like that today. Dr. Nelms will have his team participate with Mr. Fitzgerald and Ms. Quick. I think Ms. Lerner was involved in that. And
You did it again.
Mr. Franklin.
Mr. Franklin, thank you. Sorry, Bob. And those teams will get together and continue on with their discussion. But I want to be clear about this. My understanding of the receivership law, and Carl will correct me on this, is when this comes back, this won't come back as a recommendation from the district. It has to, and again, Carl will correct me if I'm wrong on this. I know he will. It will come back as a recommendation from the EPO. And then as a board, just like we could reject the superintendent's budget or alter it or recommend changes to it, we can do the same with the receiver. The problem would be, and it may or may not be a problem, is that if we disagree with what he says, the receiver says, he goes not to Terry, he goes to the commissioner. So I think we're set. That part of the old business is complete. Mr. Christoph, I see your nameplate there. If you need some additional time in executive session or to do this at another time, we can do that because I'm sure every board member will want a refresher course in that particular law. That Commissioner Powell is correct. We really were very fortunate this didn't happen before. So,
with
all right.
respect to the particular issue involved, I'll be able to address that in executive session this evening.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Next item on the agenda. Yes.
Carl, do you want me there or have someone from U of R in the executive session to discuss it also?
Sean, I would assume that if Terry's going to be there, and he usually is, he always is in our executive sessions, and this, of course, it might relate to the EPO, that you should be there as well if you have the time.
Okay.
All right. And by the way, an invitation to executive session is the invitation of the board. So if any board member has an objection to Dr. Nelms being there, speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, Carl, he will be there.
Leanne, hold on, I'm sorry.
Yep.
I guess for me, I don't have no objection if we're just talking about East, but the other conversations that need to be had, I would like it to just be the board, and if the superintendent is going to stay for those portions of other conversations. So I just want to put that out.
Absolutely, that is the understanding in terms of how it would proceed. Commissioner Powell, your hand is raised on the Zoom hand. Oh, nope, okay. All right, is there any new business? Madam Clerk, did I miss any new business? Does anybody else have any new business? No. All right, next item on the agenda is executive session. We need to go to executive session to discuss I believe it would be a contractual, let's see, what was it? Now, a matter relating to the terms and conditions of an employee of the Rochester City School District. Can I get that motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Powell. All those in favor of going into executive session, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, you folks that are loyal gladiators, school board gladiators, understand that we will come out of executive session. I'm not sure that we're going to be voting on anything, but if we are, And I think we are. We're probably voting on 871. So Tom will make sure that our vote is accessible to you. So we'll go on break. I'm not sure how long it's going to be. Hang around, stay tuned, and you can see us come out of executive session and go into a vote. Thank you. Otherwise, good night. Welcome back, citizens of Rochester and people of Monroe County and beyond. We did actually talk about a matter in executive session. We can't reveal the specifics of it, but we are obligated to vote in public on it. There is a resolution 871, which I need to have someone make a motion to advance that at the conversation level. Is there a motion? Vice President Elliott, seconded by Commissioner Malloy. Any questions or comments regarding resolution 871? Doesn't seem that there are any questions or comments, so let's go ahead and vote so the clerk can record the vote. All those in favor of resolution 871, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. If you give me a motion to adjourn, I can go ahead and eat my collard greens.
Motion to adjourn.
That has been moved by Commissioner LeBron, seconded by, I'm gonna take it from Vice President Elliott because she's cracking up there. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Good night, everybody.
Good night.